Hi everyone, my name is Patrick Akil, and if you're interested in the future of the web, Web5, this episode is for you. Joining me today is Adewale Ace Abati, web engineer and developer advocate over at Block. And we talk about the future of web development, and honestly, I love his energy. It's electrifying. So enjoy this episode. As developer advocate, how much of your time is still spent on like hands-on coding nowadays?
I got lucky on that aspect. I like to tell other developer advocates, especially new ones, that as much as possible, try not to, get away from coding because you're still a developer in code before the advocate. I would recommend, sharpening your skills. So even when someone brings an issue to you, it doesn't take you so long to get back in space to fix that issue for them or guide them on the route to fixing that issue. Because a lot of coding is very muscle memory, in my opinion. So luckily for me at TBD, a lot of our technology is very new. So we have to not just build examples, but also show the audience or the developers real life use cases. So I have to build out some of these things. So when the engineers have built out the SDKs, I actually have to build out almost full applications to test out the SDKs, to give back developer experience, feedback, to be able to respond to the audience. So it's a very fine balance with me speaking and actually getting my hands very dirty.
Nice.
But I've had developer advocate jobs in the past where I didn't do as much coding, I just did surface level in hello world, check out how this thing works, examples. But that's not the case now.
Then you lose it.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that that's not the case right now because it gets me thinking about stuff, deploying node servers, like all of those things that I probably didn't do in my previous developer advocacy roles, but now it's a fine balance. I probably do more coding, to be honest, coding and documentation than I do speaking these days.
I mean, it goes hand in hand, right? Because I don't do a lot of developer advocacy stuff. You can say the podcast and you can argue that, but the fact that I'm doing hands-on stuff really gets my mind thinking, and that's what you want to then cover and talk about and share. Because without that, then at some point, your list is done. It's only finite and nothing new pops up.
100%. I actually struggle with that a bit in my career because for me, I've always been a builder. I wanted to keep building stuff. And then on the other side, I like talking about those things. So I even got to develop advocacy without planning to.
Okay.
I just found myself when I'm done building stuff, I'm still itching to build more stuff. So I go into communities and I'm just in the audience, does anybody have a bug to fix? And then when somebody does, I'm right in there, helping them out. We're brainstorming, we're talking about. I just enjoy that. And then some of the community members, discovered that talent of mine and started recommending me for developer advocacy roles.
Okay.
And that is technically how I started getting jobs as a developer advocate.
But
I did not start my career okay, you know what, I'm going to be a developer advocate. I just wanted to be a developer. Except that I just enjoyed doing all of these other things as a hobby on the side. So when it became my full-time job, I started to burn out a lot because now I'm doing more, developer advocacy, talking, helping people out than I'm doing building. And it kind of flipped my balance a bit. And I struggled a long time trying to recover, that part of me. So being able to finally get to that was something that I really appreciate. Because this is also why I'm a huge advocate for it. You might be a developer advocate, but don't let go of that part of coding because it's always going to help. Either you're looking for a new job or switching industries, or you just want to go back to being an engineer.
Yeah, I think that's the best. I think it's really hard if you want to go from, let's say, your educational journey immediately into developer advocacy, because a lot of this is not theoretical, right? You might have the skills, but at some point, a lot of what we do is very much experience-based. And you do a lot of gut-based decision-making, and you can't do that without a few years under your belt.
100%.
And it doesn't have to be many, many years, but I think good production experience is essential in that way.
I agree.
And I'm really wondering, because in the developer advocacy role, I don't know how much experience contributing to, let's say, an existing application you have versus going again and building things from scratch and testing it out in a, let's say, more experimental application, going from 0 to 1 rather than building from 1 to 1.1 or beyond.
I think varying experiences differ. I was just at a session talking about this last week. And if you're going to hire, for example, a new developer advocate that doesn't have a ton of developer experience, but they have, say, the soft skills, they want to speak at conferences, they are open to learning, then in that situation, it's very important to have a more experienced developer who has become a developer advocate on the team, because then they can support them and also teach them these technologies or tools or approaches to stuff.
Yeah.
So that's a fine balance between just hiring people and expecting them to figure stuff out on their own if they've not had the experience. But if you've had the experience of, like you said, building stuff from 0 to 100, I think it improves your skills, because there are situations today where I'm speaking to somebody as a developer advocate and they're asking me questions. But because I've had the experience of like a full life cycle of an application, I can have conversations with them that is different from the questions they're asking me, but kind of like comes back to you. Like, this is why I'm making this decision, because it ties to your business like this, or you probably need to approach this problem from this other direction. So we're able to have these full conversations that even outside of my SDK, for example, because I did not just I'm not just trying to understand what they, like the code they want to solve right now, or why were they doing it, or what are they trying to achieve with it.
Yeah.
So I think that experience comes over time from building like, production tools, or just building 0 to 100 applications as well. Because I feel you might have the empathy, you might have the soft skills, but then being able to understand the developer that you're helping out in that moment, or the audience you're trying to reach, to solve their unique problems. You might build one SDK, but it's insane how people can use your technology for infinitely impossible use cases. Like, it's ridiculous. Sometimes I get surprised that, oh wow, that's a very good idea. Yeah.
But that's with any product, no? Yeah. Like any type of digital product, at some point users just going to be like, no, I use it for this.
And you're like, oh, I didn't think of that.
Yeah, that's not what it's built for. But does it work for you? Yeah, it works. Yeah. And I'm like, okay.
And that's awesome.
That's fine. Yeah, for sure. More so on the, let's say, coding thing with regards to web development, what are you working on nowadays rather than speaking? Because I know you're very much involved in, let's say, the next phase of web development.
Yes.
And what does that look like for you?
So the aspect of the web I'm working on mostly right now is what we like to call Web5.
Yeah.
And before people come in the audience, maybe
I'm going to say, what's that?
Why not Web4 or something like that? It's trying to find a way to use open protocols, things that are already out there, to solve some of the problems of Web2 that we have today. So for example, with Web2, which is like our everyday web, there was never an identity layer, for example. You come into the web, you're just probably supposed to just read pages and get out, or read books or whatever the case is. But then we started to do things on the web that required these websites to know who we were. And as we did that, other platforms started coming up to sell identity to us. So maybe like you have a Twitter handle, or you have an email address that you used to authenticate on the web. But this kind of just highlights the problem that there was never an identity layer integrated into the web. So what Web5 is doing is there's a technology called decentralized identifiers. It wasn't developed by my team. It was developed by it's a W3C standard for identifying stuff on the internet, people, objects, schools, whatever the case is. And there's also something called verifiable credentials, which helps you, verify claims. So if someone says, I did this, you're able to issue them a verifiable credential that is cryptographically signed and connected to this identifier that they have. And the best thing about that identifier is anyone can create it, just like your name.
Yeah.
But no one owns it. Like Twitter cannot come to you and be like, yo, give me that identifier, it's mine. Yeah. Because you've created it, you have the private keys, you have all of those things.
So it's yours.
It's yours. Yeah. You can use it anywhere. You can choose to anonymize it, whatever the case is. So what we're doing with Web5 in this case is bringing these open protocols together that already exist separately on the internet and trying to like make them as a stack of the web. So you could be building your own regular web application, maybe with Nuxt or React, as the case may be. But for authentication, you're using a decentralized identifier authentication. You're using a verifiable credential to confirm that this is who they say they are, or they went to the school, or you're doing KYC, whatever the case is. So we are using these open protocols to actually develop a new stack, a new protocol for the web, which is what we now call Web5. And that also includes a very interesting part called decentralized web nodes that allows you to then store your data on your own devices or your own servers, as the case may be, without thinking too much about it. A beautiful example I saw about this just last week was at the conference, we had developers conference, and someone built out a messaging application that was actually end-to-end. So the messages are sent between me and you are stored in our local decentralized web nodes. So it's not like stored on a central server where someone claims to encrypt it, but they are directing the information somewhere else. It's literally on my device, on your device, or any server that we choose to host ourselves. So these are like it's a growing development, it's a growing technology, but these are like things that are being made possible with what we call Web5. And using these three pillars that are literally open standards that are created by web bodies. And what we're doing at TBD, for example, is just bringing these things together and say, oh, this is how they could work together. and that is what we've termed Web5. So to answer your initial question, because I feel like I just went around.
Yeah, no, interesting.
So to answer your initial question, what I do these days is actually to, of course, speak with people that are interested. People are building amazing solutions out of this, especially because it's a new ecosystem that is developing. So I'm having to like build out use cases, examples, and we have this project called TBDX that also brings these technologies into the financial world. So how can you send money across borders using decentralized identifiers, using verifiable credentials, and all of those things? So I'm having to build, for example, proof of concept, understand what the edge case look like. And it's difficult because unlike other technologies that already exist, there's no documentation. I am tasked with creating the documentation for it. So I need to dig deep, understand the implementations that have been made, and at the same time, speak with the engineers that are making decisions. Oh, this is what I think the developer experience could look like. It could get better. It could improve like this, because I assume a developer might want to use it like this, blah, 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 stuff like that. So my day-to-day kind of like revolves around building stuff to show what is possible with these things, and then sharing with the community, and then we have conversations. I speak about it sometimes, and also get back to the engineers like, oh, I got this feedback. This might be broken. How about we do this way? And stuff like that. So
interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, the web, if I think back when I first kind of did something on the web, I made an account and it wasn't my name. Like it was some weird ass name, basically.
I had a weird email like that too.
Yeah, like, and then I changed it and then I used my name as my email, and that everything shifted. And nowadays, more and more, like your email is still somewhere else and it's not really yours, but then it's now become part of you, right? Because that's how you receive information. Yet it doesn't belong to me. At the end of the day, if Microsoft bursts to the ground, then my email goes along with it. And I don't have anything anymore. And I think nowadays people are more and more thinking of, but why do we have these people in the middle, or companies in the middle, or service in the middle, when it's my data? And now all of a sudden people want to, on the web, be identifiable as themselves. Yeah. And that's new, right? Because I didn't care if it was my name or a different name, or if it was me, or if I was just trolling on the internet. Nowadays people want to know who that troll is. Yeah. And people are also fine with it, because then all of a sudden you can't troll as much anymore if people know it's you.
Right. I think it's new, and at the same time not so new. But I think the key part is the number of people that care about what their data and identity is being used for has increased dramatically over the years. Yeah. Also, when I'm talking about these things, I try to avoid just saying decentralization, because people be like, oh, blockchain or stuff like that. But it's not connected to that in any way. Being able to just develop applications that you have control over who or what identifies you goes a long way. And people think about, how can I handle this data, or do I need to be a technical person to be able to use identifiers and stuff like that? But the reality is that they are already being used in the background for some of these things. So let's say you go to LinkedIn, for example, and you're issued a certificate. Most likely, for some of the certificates, I think, they've created a decentralized identifier for you, and they've connected the certificate that they issued for you to that identifier. So even if you take it elsewhere, it belongs to you, right? And so they've been like tiny implementations of this all across board. But the goal is so that eventually every user, whether you care about, prioritizing or, safeguarding your identity or your data, or you don't care, you probably don't even get to know that is happening in the background. But if you like want to move from being a regular user to a more technical user, you should have the capability to do that. Yeah. So I think the future would be making that form of new identity structure and data storage and all of those things more accessible to the everyday user.
Yeah, interesting. Like, I care what happens with my data, but I don't care enough yet. That's the thing. And for the people that do definitely care and care enough, this is becoming more important. But then to get adoption, like I shouldn't be a technical person to make this happen, right?
That's the end goal.
I should be unburdened in the same way that I am now with whatever happens to my data, 100%. Except then I own it, basically.
Yeah, you do.
But then a lot of organizations are going to burn to the ground if they don't have the data of the others anymore.
So that I think it's just going to create a different type of, business model, maybe. People could start to get incentivized about buying their data. So you can start making money off of your own data. And also these companies could avoid maybe litigation from using data that they were not authorized to have, because you've given off your data now willingly. There might be a bit of, acquisition, adoption, arguments for and against. But I think in due time, the larger community, larger audience will dictate how this, big tech eventually adopt stuff like that. Yeah. And there's this example that normally brings about the question you just asked, and is if you have decentralized web nodes and you store your own data privately, we stand a chance to experience a platform like Spotify, allowing you to move your playlist from one music provider to another. So let's say I'm on Spotify and they're using, they built a decentralized web application. They are using my DID, which is decentralized identifier, and my playlist, my music, favorite music and stuff is stored locally with me. If I go to Apple Music, I should be able to do that. Then people ask the question you just asked. What will make Spotify do that?
Yeah.
Why would Apple do that?
Exactly.
Stuff like that. And then it boils that, okay, imagine someone else comes along and they build an amazing experience and they say, you can bring your data from anywhere, you can take your data anywhere. Now, people that care about their data at that moment will be like, I want to go to this guy. And then they start to go to this guy. And then more people start to care about their data and the community starts to dictate what is essential or not. So the criteria then becomes, for me to sign up on Spotify, can I go away with my data or not? No, sorry, I'm not signing up.
Yeah.
And then Spotify has to be like, looks like we have to let people, bring their own data or go away with their own data, which probably just need to improve our experience. And then that way we've changed the ecosystem based on what the larger community wanted. But this might all be wishful thinking because it might follow a different approach. But I think that's probably what's possible. But it just ties back to your question, like, why would they do it?
Yeah. Now we can't do that. And it's a thing of who's first to market, because that's usually what people use, and what's the experience then. And then regardless of if there are better competitors in the future, and I use this example of Google Maps versus Apple Maps because that's a previous conversation I had with Willem at Veed. He used this. He said when Apple Maps came out, it was actually not great. And Google Maps was already out there. And because of that, you probably went to Google Maps. And
is Apple Maps better now?
Nowadays, Apple Maps is actually quite good. And everything's integrated into the Apple ecosystem. Like, they've improved it. And I used it recently. Like, it is better and better. It might be better than Google Maps, but I will not switch because everything is in Google Maps now. And I'm like, I'm invested. I'm hooked. I don't have any incentive to switch, so I don't.
I was just going to say that, like, I just assumed in my head, from maybe like 5, 6, 10 years ago, whenever it was, that Apple Maps is shit and that's it.
Yeah.
We use Google Maps. It just became that default for me. Yeah. And that's a very good point. I might try it out.
I mean, development hasn't stopped, right? So you have 10 years of, let's say, problems they've solved, problems maybe you now have with Google Maps that they've solved on Apple Maps, and you don't know because you're just hooked in.
And you never just try it.
No. And all those saved locations, all those favorite food places that you want to go are all in Google Maps. Those are never going to be in Apple Maps, or you have to redo it. And hell no, you're going to redo it.
That is a lot of data, exactly.
Yeah, that's really funny, man. So in this way, because you are the owner and it's on whatever you have device-wise, you would be able to then, let's say, load it in into Apple Maps in that way.
Yeah, and it just worked automatically.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I really wonder how this adoption thing is going to work, because if it's going to be effortless, that's the only way I see adoption.
Yeah.
So then from a non-technical standpoint, I don't know how that would work, right? If I were to make that switch from Google Maps to Apple Maps and I have my data on my local, either on my phone or it's centralized, also with my laptop back home, how would that work flawlessly?
Yeah, I mean, let's go to a world where everything is already set up and the ecosystem has grown. Just last week as well, the Digital Identity Foundation, I think I got that correct, DIF, in partnership with Google Cloud, actually just announced hosting a community decentralized web node.
Yeah.
So now the way it works is, while you have your data locally, you can choose to sync to an online node for the decentralized web node. So the way this works is, if someone will send you a message or you want to access something on another device, it goes to the online one, which is synced with your local device. And then the data is basically on your local device, on your own chosen server. So if you're switching across devices, the information is still with you. If you're going anywhere else, information is still yours on both your local DWN and your online DWN. Right?
Yeah.
So many applications or ecosystems, how would I put this, are already being built, right? For example, we have something called Heirloom. And Heirloom is, we have this live stream on my company that we do almost every Friday. So we find people that are building stuff in the ecosystem, and we interviewed Heirloom.
I love that.
Yeah. And what they do, because it makes us also learn about the ecosystem, right? What they do is they go to like schools, for example, universities, and they try to issue certificates for graduating, for example, to these students that are living in the school. And one of the hardest places to get adoption is these schools, because they made a point where they said they can go back to their archive and find a certificate that they issued in sheepskin.
Yeah.
Like they need it to be able to stand the test of time. They need to be able to, last for however long it is, because they want to be able to authenticate their results. And there's no better alternative to that than cryptographically signed digital assets that will always exist and be connected to whoever I say it's connected to.
Yeah.
Because they are tamper-proof. If you edit anything in there, it's going to tell you there's an error. Like all of those things can stand test of time. So I think adoption is going to be gradual, where as people start to develop, applications that match your need, you find yourself gradually getting into the ecosystem, and you just think about it naturally. You don't just think about, I want to get my certificate, for example. I need to go get a deed. I need to go.
Yeah.
You never think about that. It's just going to happen to you. This is your certificate. You can now start your Apple Wallet, for example. And before you know it, you've started using verifiable credentials in your Apple Wallet, and then you have to do something else, and you have to do something else. And gradually, it becomes a norm for you. And I think we're going to get to that point where different providers, either phone, manufacturers, online services, cloud services, and even institutions will start to use some of this. And then you don't have to worry about it anymore. In Louisiana, they already issue verifiable credentials in the form of driver's license, so digital driver's licenses. So you can, for example, my manager actually bought booze. She has this stock that she bought booze with a verifiable credential.
Okay.
And basically, when you are buying alcohol online, or if you order it online, they have to come give it to you. They have to check that you're above 21. But normally, you give them your driver's license or something else, and they can see your date of birth, which is unnecessary information. But with this kind of process, and she actually did this already, by the way. It's not like, I'm not imagining this.
Yeah.
The person that is delivering the alcohol to you can literally just check using the driver's license. Is this person above 21 or not?
Yeah.
It's a Boolean value. Even though you have your birth certificate, your date of birth in the driver's license, it just responds to the check. Yes, this person is above 21.
Yeah.
And it's done.
That's it.
And that's exactly how it happened for her. And that is how we slowly integrate without even thinking,
interesting.
Oh, this is a decentralized identifier, this is a verifiable credential. It just kind of naturally flows into our way of life. And that is the optimism I also have into how it's going to become like just normal stuff for everyday people.
Yeah, I'm going to love seeing how this evolves, because I think it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think we would also lose some things we have now? Because there's a whole now new branch, which is data science, data engineering, where people basically solve big data problems and sometimes small data problems as well, because obviously data is kind of hard to tamper with. But in the end, if it's decentralized, can we still do, for example, figure out what the best recommendations are based on the aggregates and the patterns of the people that basically the data we have? Because you don't have that data anymore. You only have people checking in, probably sharing their data to do some stuff, and then going away as well.
That is a very good question. I'm sure there are probably more thought out answers to that. But off the top of my head, what I would say is, for when you're in control of your data, you can choose what data can be public or encrypted.
Yeah.
So for example, if you're building a review website in the age of the digitalized web where people have their own data, if you choose to make the review of something you bought public, the platform can access this because it's already public. You've shared it with them, or you give them permission to access it, and use this to divide recommendations, which will also be, fall back into like the music applications to get your recommendations and stuff. So it might be a different approach eventually, like maybe or even new business model. But because you have public and encrypted data that you can choose to, give people access to, it could shape how those things, research and also other things, come into play.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll completely lose it, but I think there might be a change in direction into how these things are approached.
Yeah. How you make it happen?
But the plus there is you are gonna hope that there's a positive in you switching to this new way, and that is why you're doing it in the first place.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
How much is data worth though? Because there are big organizations that basically their business model is to sell other people data, and it doesn't even have to be like people data. It can even be data of a cat or a dog or whatever, and they sell that, and that's then their business model basically.
Yeah. That is a good question that I do not have an answer to.
I still don't know, because the worth is in the aggregation, right? Because then you can do pattern recognition and you can solve some problems based on the patterns of similarities. That's what I think. That's my assumption. So then the data might be worth it to other organizations. And then even then, it's mainly with the capitalist mindset to sell something to specific user groups or specific owners of pets, and even in some cases. And that will change if people kind of own their data, but then, they have the option in this kind of marketplace to sell their data. But they have no clue what it's worth. Yeah,
actually, they don't have any clue what it's worth, but then you might start having people that start to make offers. And then you start to get an idea, this person gives me a better offer for this than this. And any data that you choose to share through that model, they could use it for anything.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to point out as well is, why do users have their own data? applications can also have their own data.
That's
so
fair.
You can have an idea of how people go through your application, what they're trying to do, or even though you don't know who it is, you don't have any access to their personal identifiable information. You can, on your application, you can tell like 10,000 people ordered cat litters or something, as case maybe. So you have your own data that you can still store, process, and use that to make decisions and stuff like that. So while I don't have the full picture, I think it's still something to consider that every institution, every individual would be able to control their own data. And another benefit for it on the end of the applications is that now you don't have to worry about data centers that are just huge because you want to store everybody's data. And yeah, I just hope for the best because I'm really excited about it. Because it might change the way we just approach the internet, and also false news, fake news, or AI generated stuff. Like, how do I know this is legit or not? And the entire potential just makes me excited. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, the more peer-to-peer we have, and also the more data you then have on a local machine, the less data centers we need. And data centers are like the biggest carbon emitters. Like, I'm now product manager at ING, and we do a lot with sustainability. And I looked into Microsoft's, let's say, absolute emission charts. And absolute emission charts, they don't tell you that much, but they give you a picture. And they were on a downtrend, right? Because companies nowadays have to set targets for themselves. They publicly disclose it. It's more legislation driven. So companies do that. But then all of a sudden, when you saw kind of late last year, early mid last year, when we hit more of this AI generation and AI boom, compute started going up on Microsoft's end, which also reflected in the absolute emissions. They went through the roof with regards to that. It's because people used more compute. And you can't, like, if you have data centers, that's where it runs on. And you can't just remove that. Microsoft can't say, oh, we don't have data centers anymore because we need the compute basically for people to do their stuff.
Interesting.
But the more, I think, local machines get more powerful, the more compute you can offload to a local machine as well, which means you don't need those centralized data centers anymore.
That is very interesting. Do you think that is connected to, because I had news about like the new update on Windows, I think, where you have like an AI running locally that's recording your screen and then it's doing all the compute locally on your devices?
That's what I would do, to offload the compute on a centralized server at the end of the day.
But the people are worried about privacy because you're recording my entire screen. I can take snapshots. Like, how do I know you're not in the background sending this backup?
You'll never know. That's the thing. You have to believe at some point. But if you know that your data runs locally and it doesn't exit your machine, then that trust is more so out of the box, huh?
100%.
Yeah. Like, I like those initiatives where people are thinking of cutting up a data center, and someone, I forgot whom, gave me the example of, there's a company that publishes or basically creates a data center underneath swimming pools at hotels or even public swimming pools. And then the heat of that data center goes into the swimming pool, and they basically reduce their energy bill by like 70%, which is crazy to me because this is a different concept than decentralizing, let's say, on a local machine. It's cutting up a data center and having smaller data centers.
Interesting.
And you weave a web of probably compute power at the end of the day. But then you also don't just harm the planet, you give back in saving energy costs elsewhere.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Even if the heat from the, from the server data center eats up the pool, if that's how they save energy, how do you cool the data center?
Yeah, you don't. I didn't think about that. Yeah, you probably have to offload and then compute somewhere else and just let it cool down in that way.
Oh my days.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, for sure.
It sounds exciting, 100%.
Yeah. With this trailblazing that you're doing, things have not been established. And nowadays, I see a lot of people that are concerned with regards to whatever generative AI can do, and people losing kind of their own productivity to AI, which also means that sometimes their job or their work might become obsolete.
Yeah.
But for you, my assumption is when you're trailblazing, AI doesn't know what you don't know because no one knows, basically. It still has to be figured out. What is your take on kind of this AI generation boom?
I mean, at first you're skeptical because when you see a lot of people just, talk from the pessimistic approach, like, oh, this is going to be terrible. It's going to take our jobs. And then when you see how different other people start to use AI, then you come up with your own ideas. Like, oh, I see. The way I've found or integrated AI into my work, because like you said, I can ask the AI question about Web5 right now and it's not going to give me a correct answer. But what I've tried to use it for is to improve my own efficiency, my own pace. So say I was building a wallet application to test out like TBDEX, which is an open protocol for sending money across borders. So I wanted to do like, say, USD to USDC. So I needed to build out the wallet that would show this example to people. Now, in an ideal world without AI, I have to like, do a layout or get templates, blah, 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 blah. But that's not what I'm trying to show you. I'm not trying to show you that I can build a good wallet.
Yeah.
I'm trying to show you that you can transfer money from stuff like this. So using AI tools like V0 from Vercel and also ChatGPT, I was able to generate like a very, how would I put it, like a design system. And then I used ChatGPT to generate pages using that design system. And then I just went to my application with pages that I controlled. I basically told the AI, move this button this way, do this way. Like, I knew what I wanted. So it wasn't like, I'm relying on ChatGPT to please give me an idea of a wallet, for example. I could see the wallet. I knew what I wanted to build, but I didn't want to take the time to like do that manual labor, so to say, to do the structure. And I used AI for that. So once that was ready, I just went into the code, cleaned up, make it like a view template, cleaned up my integrations, did my transfer. And I probably cut my work there probably in 70%, maybe. Because I didn't have to worry about those other things that AI can do for me.
Yeah.
And that is personally for me, how I advocate AI for you to get better as a developer. It improves your deadlines.
Yeah.
It improves your efficiency. And sometimes I could just be stuck. Say maybe someone asks me a question and I know what I want to say, but I can't really structure it. And I ask AI the question and it responds to me. I'm not asking AI the question to take that answer to go give to you. But by reading the answer, I'm able to like form my own thoughts better and then I respond to you like a normal human being. So I use the way I've used the AI in my work and just personally is just trying to accentuate the things I want to do already. So I know what I want to do already. How can I make it faster? How can I make it more efficient?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably going to tap into different industries. So instead of people being afraid necessarily of like the AI power and stuff like that or replacing you, how about it makes you better that you become irreplaceable?
Yeah. 70% is a lot. Like in productivity, that increase, we haven't seen that elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No.
Because I mean, I know I just needed to make like a few SDK calls, but I could spend ages in making sure that the button hides or shows, it's properly aligned, it's the right color, all of those things that are just repeated tasks that we do every single time. So why not let someone else do it?
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it makes sense. Be careful with the tapping on the table, but I think the mic is going to pick that up.
Right,
so sorry
that makes sense. My bad.
No worries. I was thinking of the future of web development nowadays because I still think we have the three biggest established front-end frameworks. We have React, we have Angular, we have Vue. I think Solid is gaining a bit more adoption. And then you have kind of spin-offs, what people call meta frameworks of the same thing, basically. And it might even be one layer deeper where you have spin-offs then of the spin-offs. Is that also something you've seen? Because I don't know where it's headed. I think people want to be unburdened in some aspects, but then want control and less convention, I guess. But I don't think convention is a bad thing.
I agree. I was developer advocate at Code Sandbox. I don't know if you know Code Sandbox.
Yeah.
It's an online browser editor.
For sure.
And one of the things I had to do was, make sure that the editor could handle like the forever coming new array of JS frameworks. So you're building examples and you're, speaking to communities of these different, technologies.
Yeah.
And while a lot of these frameworks feel very similar, I think it's just a problem of the JavaScript ecosystem in general, where people try to use frameworks to solve their own use cases. I think that kind of defeats the purpose of frameworks, because frameworks are supposed to be like a starting point that then goes wide into different solutions. And while you might have like the major ones that try like, you can use this for anything, I think it's disingenuous to want to build specific frameworks for almost specific use cases.
Yeah.
But across that entire journey, I've been able to find like very exciting ones that actually makes life easy. For example, Astro and maybe Remix. I haven't used a lot of it, but they seem to approach this from either bringing back a new technology or a new approach, or saying this is the approach we want to take to solve all of these things.
Yeah.
But it doesn't exactly defeat the fact that there are probably just way too many.
Yeah.
So if you're able to like, have conventions and say, this is what we want to be able to do, and these are the tools that are available for it, I think it will help a lot of people, especially beginners as well, to just have a couple, and okay, this is how you build web applications using JavaScript, versus just hundreds of frameworks that some of them do the same things.
Yeah, it's I don't know how to solve this problem, right? Because people can also create a spin-off of a programming language, but it doesn't happen as much.
No.
For some reason, JavaScript frameworks just happens way more often. And then you find things like Astro, which is really cool. And then you can see the potential. But yeah, if you don't have the flexibility to create an Astro in the first place, then you lose that benefit, right? Yeah. But then people take this and run with it. And then you have just numerous frameworks. And at the end, you use what is established, especially at larger organizations. We're not going to use an Astro if it hasn't found its footing yet.
Yeah.
as much as kind of the bigger three at the end of the day. And it's really hard to find adoption if other people then don't use it. So then it's this chicken egg problem where you want 100%. Adoption, but you need adoption to use it.
I try to tell developers that probably fixated on that problem, like, oh, what framework should I use and stuff like that. I'm like, you're probably going about this the wrong way.
Yeah.
What problem do you want to solve? What are you trying to build? What are you comfortable with? And then you try and like get into that space. If you're trying to build a solution for your company, you probably want to use something that you're already using in-house. And it probably is going to pay you to learn it. On your own time, of course, you could learn like additional tools just for probably for the fun of it or because you want to have the experience. But when it comes to actually solving these problems, it's like, what is the problem you want to solve?
Yeah.
And what do you think will help you solve this quicker, faster, efficiently, and stuff like that? Your preferences might come into play, but you need to focus more on how do I get the job done versus, oh shit, there are 100, sorry, I didn't language. there are 100 frameworks. How do I spend like 1 day, 2 days trying to decide which one to use, right? Yeah. And I think we should probably avoid doing that.
Yeah, you don't have to. Like if you think that's fun, then you can do that. But what really drives me is indeed more so the problem solving. How can I use whatever I use and then do that? And I haven't done web development in probably like a good year. The last thing I did was mainly Go on the back end. Then we had HTML generated templates. And then we did vanilla JavaScript. I was like, man, this just makes it work.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've seen things kind of evolve from the sidelines. And it at some points, I'm like, okay, this is really cool. And at some points, I'm like, man, this is a mess.
Yeah, I agree.
To be honest.
I agree. I hope we don't like continuously reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
I don't know why we do it. I have become a huge fan of Vue just because it's simple to use. And
I love Vue.
Yeah. I look at Vue and I'm like, there are tools in Vue ecosystem that just helps me get the job done. And of course, people probably prefer React in some cases because they've gotten used to that, and that's 100% like fine. But I think with the options that we have, we're probably able to build probably any web application that we need versus trying to then solve a niche problem with another JavaScript framework. That's probably not the answer.
No, absolutely not. No. And I think it's okay to be opinionated.
Yeah.
And then just find your like-minded people and execute. Because at the end of the day, you can have an opinion, but the execution matters more than your opinion. And you have to execute to get stuff done.
Yeah.
Like that's the hard part. I really love Go as a backend language. And I was in this team, and I love programming also because I love the language that I'm doing. If I were to do it in another language that I didn't love, I wouldn't have as much fun. And then someone switched from the JVM language and landscape and ecosystem to Go, and they just hated it. They were like, I have so many things in the JVM language that I don't have in Go. And they hated it. And they really couldn't get over that initial hump. So they switched back. And I'm like, okay, that's fine.
That's understandable.
You can still like get over that and execute. But if you don't like what you're doing on a day-to-day, like that's going to hit you. So then it made sense to move away again.
I agree. I just like to focus on like what problem am I trying to solve. Because for example, as a developer advocate, it's part of my job description to put like my hands into like so many technologies.
Yeah.
Most recently with our SDKs, they are available in JavaScript, Kotlin, and Swift. So I've had to like go learn how to use Swift, go learn how to use Kotlin.
That's a lot.
Yes. Yeah. I dislike Swift.
Okay. Me too. Yeah. It's hard. Maybe it's because Swift. It's difficult. Yeah.
Some of the things that they just didn't feel very straightforward to me. Probably not because I'm a Swift developer, but probably because of where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
But I still had to do my job. I still had to like, do documentation in Swift. But I'm probably a much happier person while I'm doing JavaScript or Kotlin in the documentation, right? So it's one thing to like not like language, but it's another thing to focus on getting the job done if that's what's required of you at that moment.
I really like how you put that. You're like, it's probably not because of the language, but because it's where I'm coming from, right? And that experience matters a lot.
100%.
I think if Swift is your first language, you just have this love for the first language. Like that you can't get over that. Mine's like
that's
Python 2.7. No brackets, no bullshit. is that.
That's me on PHP.
Involved. Yeah, exactly.
I love PHP.
Like it's always going to happen that way. Yeah. And then when you pick up a new language, you have that baggage with you. So then you compare. I 100%. Think it's very human to compare.
I agree.
And if you don't like it, you don't like it.
I agree.
Yeah, man. But why did you choose to then, because I know you like solving problems, Web5 and the problems that will solve are problems we don't know we have yet, right? And we can see some symptoms, but that's like really big on the scale of the web.
Yeah.
And previous products or like smaller startups, they solve a specific niche for a specific user group.
Yeah.
How's this balance between solving, let's say, a huge problem versus solving these smaller problems that you've done in the past?
Yeah. So there's a story there. So I mean, when I started out learning how to code, I became really fascinated with the web. So I was like a front-end engineer at some point, a back-end engineer at some point, a full-stack engineer at some point. And I've had to like, solve problems in those capacities, like just building stuff. But one thing that always stood out for me or even got me into tech in the first place was getting excited by the idea of people inventing things. So I'm like, how did someone build this thing? Like I literally just imagined it. And as a developer and engineer, after a few hours, days, weeks, whatever, years, sometimes it's now like alive. Like people can interact with it. And I think that's the root of like the solving the problem. It's not just solving the problem for the sake of solving the problem, but it's seeing the advancement in the journey and being a part of it. So as a kid growing up, I'm looking at a Windows computer, for example. I'm looking at different technologies, and I wonder, who are the people that invented this? Studying computer science, you're reading up on like the generations of the computer, the ARPANET, the internet, how it came about to be. And then seeing the opportunity at TBD to work on like Web5, for example, was I'm being in a position where I can help bring in a new era of the web where in 10 years, maybe 15 years, maybe people start to talk about this technology. Like it's now a normal thing. Like it's just the way we talk about Web2. Like it's just the web. We just use it.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to feel a sense of pride there that I was able to create resources or solve problems in advance or contribute to solving those problems that make our everyday possible now. So it's more of a futuristic problem solving in advance and trying to figure out things that have not been figured out anywhere because there's no documentation elsewhere apart from the ones that we already created. And that's exciting in its own right because I'm doing work that I've never done. But it also makes me feel like those people I used to look up to as a younger child, like how did Bill Gates come up with Microsoft? How did you build up MS-DOS? Like, doing all of those things. And wow, that must be nice. Yeah. Being able to build stuff out of nothing or something that never existed. And then getting the opportunity to do this on a global scale. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it gets me like up every morning, like it gets me excited. I mean, that is where like, damn, I don't know what I'm doing. Because it's a very huge space and a lot of this work has been going on for years. But I think we're getting closer to where it's taking more structure and the ecosystem is starting to form more. And eventually, like I said earlier, I think it's going to get to a point where the integration is just seamless. So you're not thinking that, this is Web5 or you're using a decentralized identifier or you're using a verifiable credential. It just is.
Yeah.
Right. So like you have a digital, driver's license. There's some countries today that already do a digital travel document. So if you're traveling, you just like tap something on your phone and you can board, it's like your passport, stuff like that. And that is eventually where we'll get to, not just on mobile applications or mobile, but across the internet.
Yeah.
And I think there'll be a sense of pride when I'm probably telling my grandkids like, I helped bring that about.
Absolutely. I love that.
So that is what it is.
That's a beautiful story. I love the vision. I love the big dream.
Yeah.
And the energy that you get also while you talk about it. Like it
awesome.
comes across. It's electrifying.
Thank you.
It's been great, man. I'm having a blast. Is there anything before we round off that you still wanted to share?
I think we've had a very good conversation that kind of covered the entire thing. But I try to share my experience on my, social media platforms and stuff like that. And one thing that usually comes up that I think is it could easily be a one answer fits all questions. And I like to share today is just, focusing on value. Just like you said, the way my excitement comes when I'm talking about these things is because I'm not just thinking about the work I have to do to get there. I'm thinking about what value this represents to like different people in different areas of life. And it's not just starting today. While I was learning how to code and I wanted to, build out my first website, for example, I wasn't thinking about just a checklist like, I now know how to code. I was thinking more about, now I can build something that does this for people, and all of those things, right? So if you're starting out as a developer or any role in general, thinking about how the work you'd be able to do and the value they could bring to people and improving on that across board, I think would just help you grow in your career, but also find meaning in the work that you do. And I just wanted to share that to the audience.
Great, man. Focus on what value you can deliver.
Yes, 100%.
Awesome. Thanks again so much for coming on.
Patrick.
I'm going to round it off here. Thanks again for listening. Put some comments and some love in the comments below. Let us know what you thought of this episode. And thanks again for listening. We'll see you on the next one.